Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Today we're going to tell you how Pixies can help you on your journey to success with our guest, Kelly McMenamin. Kelly, welcome to our show.
Well, thanks for having me, Bill.
Kelly, you're the author of a book, Organize Your Way. But where do Pixies come in? I understand organization. You're a real person. Where's this Pixie stuff?
Well, my partner, my sister, she co-authored the book with me, and she came up with the title. She's the really creative one of the two and the quote-unquote messy organizer. And she got a website. I was still working at a hedge fund, and she, as a birthday present, got me a website called Pixies Did It and said, one day maybe we'll start a company together. And we did, called Pixies Did It. We didn't know at the time what it was going to be, but it became organizing, and organizing by personality type, because my sister and I are so incredibly different, and we approach organizations so differently. I tried for the better part of my life to get her to organize the way I thought she should, my way. And finally, one day, she was like, maybe I need a different way. And she did. And from there was the genesis of Pixies Did It. We're magical creatures who help you stay organized, get and stay organized.
So we have a hedge fund manager and a mom, and they're both Pixies.
Exactly.
Okay, whatever you say, it's your business, and it works, so I'm not going to argue. As I said to you before the show, Kelly, just going through your book and preparing for today's show, I did find it's making me neater. Maybe I'm fearful of talking to you and seeing you in person, so I cleaned up my little area on the desk, and you might look and say, oh, well, gosh, that's not really clean. But to me it is, and I did some work on it yesterday, and I actually threw things out. So you've made me a better person, so those little pixies, I think I'm afraid of pixies, not knowing what a pixie can do or how strong they are or what powers they have. So
well, you know what?
I'm sorry, you have 7 principles, and you talk about in your book. Can you tell us some of these beginning guideline principles?
Well, first is figuring out what your organizing style is, what your personality type is. You can go to our website, pixiesdidit.com, and we have a quiz. I think you were saying you took it, and you can find out who you are. And the other way to do it is to go on our website and just read about the different types, because sometimes you don't even need a quiz. You'll read it and think, oh, that is me. You're either a piler or a filer, you're somebody who's obsessed with to-do lists, or you don't even need them to get things done. So you can read about the different styles on our website, and pixiesdidit.com. And then, from there, you start to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. And you build systems that basically buttress your weaknesses and then reinforce what it comes really easy to you, and making sure you have systems that, kind of underline both of those realities.
Do you find that as you're working with people, and I'll use the example that a lot of them have been working with their left hand and they're really right-handed, or vice versa? Yes.
And my sister, because she's so different and she's not your average organizer, we call she is particularly an organic freedom. That is the title for her type. And she's a piler, and she doesn't need to make her bed every day to feel organized, whereas I really do. She doesn't use a to-do list, whereas I do. And, her whole life she's been told she should be making her bed. She should be doing this. She should be doing that. Essentially, you should be using your right hand, and you kind of almost, ironically, she actually is left-handed. But, it's not that you can't use your right hand if you're left-handed. It's just harder. And so we're just about figuring out ways to help people who are a little bit different on the organizational scale, do things to be able to find things when they need them.
Now, I'm going to be talking to you almost like a diet expert, because that's the way I analogize what you do. Mm-hmm. You're structuring part of our life. A diet person would tell me to stop eating sugar-free foods or less calories or something. They would have a strategy. So I imagine that's what you have. Can we do this with help from your book? Or, to be honest, do we need a mentor, a boss, a coach, someone to be over us and say, get those shoes out of there?
Well, certain personality types definitely do well with deadlines, which is kind of what having a boss come over, having, somebody, lording over you to finish things. Some personality types don't need it. A classic, sometimes who's me, who is just a place for everything in its place, once you kind of make up your mind, you'll do it. Once it's on your to-do list, you'll do it. But someone like my sister on the end of the scale, Organic Freedoms, they do need more deadlines, forced deadlines. Like you're going to throw a party at your house and that'll be enough to get your living room in shape or your entryway. And those are the kind of tricks we help clients learn, and how to get them motivated to actually be organized like they want to be, rather than me telling you how it should look.
You just poked me right in the nose. I'm that list person. If it's on a list, it came from God, even though I wrote it on the list. Buy a cupcake, get new stamps, and shine your shoes. Yep. If it's on a list, it has to be taken care of. Mm-hmm. But if it's not on a list, God help it, because the house could be burning. I have to write it on the list, put out fire, and then I can do it. So that's me. So whatever category.
Now I think maybe you are a classic structure. Once people tell me certain things about their personality types, I almost can eliminate other types. It doesn't mean someone, who isn't a classic can't ever use to-do lists. It's not an obsession. My joke is I call mine my precious. I sometimes when I do things, this is actually not productive, but it makes me happy, so I do it. I go back and I write. Let's say I had not written down that we have an interview today. Obviously I did because I'm obsessed with my to-do list, but I would go back, put it in, and check it off, because the joy I get of checking off an accomplishment, makes me happy. And sometimes, even though it's not as productive to go back and do that, if it makes you happy and makes you want to get more things done, go for it. So another principle is like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What works for you, embrace it. Even if somebody tells you that's not productive or you should do it this way, if it's working, don't mess with it. Something my sister does, I always thought was so crazy. So this is another principle, which is, kind of working with systems that work for you, even if they're alternative, is when she really can't forget something, when it's really important and she doesn't want to mess it up, she writes it on her hand because she knows she won't forget it. It's always on her. It's always reminding her. And I thought it was so nutty until I was just started this business a little over 10 years ago. I was watching CNBC and I saw Richard Branson being interviewed for a new business venture, and he had something written on the back of his hand. And at the end of the interview, one of the anchors asked him, is that something written on the back of your hand? And he looked at it, was surprised that it was still there, and said, oh yeah, it's my backup system to remember good ideas. I was at a party last night. I usually write it down in a small notebook, but I didn't have my notebook on me, so I wrote it on the back of my hand. And the anchor said, well, isn't that what cocktail napkins are for? And without even missing a beat, Richard Branson said, I would lose the cocktail napkin. So this is my backup system.
So he knows what works for him.
He knows what works for him.
I'm just wondering, as an offshoot, now I know I haven't seen this in your book, but is this something you ever worked with the people who do dating? I'm just wondering if you have to be opposites to get along, because if two people who made lists, like if you and I were working in a business together, would we be better because we have lists all over, or would we drive each other crazy?
Well, I think you'd be simpatico in that you'd think, oh, let's write it on a list. Oh, yes, that's what one does. One writes it on a list, and it might be hard. If you don't write a list by nature and you have a boss, let's say, who thinks to-do list is how you get things done and how you're productive, that boss is often, or a mentor is often going to be telling you, what you really should be doing. Your problem is you need to have to-do lists. But everyone messes up. Even people with to-do lists messes up every once in a while. It's not actually the raison d'etre for the entire world. And really that's the message of Pixies Did It and our organizational company is there isn't one size fits all. There isn't one way to organize. There's the best way for you. And what we're about is helping people figure out what is that best way or best ways. So that it underpins your life without you even thinking about it, so that you can stay organized without having really to do that much. Because once you set up a system, it works with what you do naturally. If you toss your keys on a counter when you come in, having a little bowl there corrals them. They won't get moved around. It looks like a permanent home. Somebody's not going to move them, and you'll be able to find them. But it goes with what you naturally do, which is toss your keys, on a surface.
Kelly, we want to learn more, but at this point in the show, we want to remind our audience that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Today, our special guest is Kelly McMenamin. She's the author of Organize Your Way. And Kelly, would you tell us, is there a website where we can learn more, and where can we get this book if we're desperate like me?
There is a website, is pixiesdidit.com. And it's available on our website, but it's also available on Amazon. And you can, they're taking over the world. So you can just add it to your purchase of maybe Lazy Susans or
and I'll tell our audience,
organized.
We'll give that information as we always do again a few more times during the show. But I will tell our audience that as I'm reading your book, first of all, just going through it motivated me to start doing a few small things. And I really appreciate when I go into a place, if I see someone who's as sloppy as me, I wouldn't deal with them. Mm-hmm. I just wouldn't. I have things out. I have them in piles. And especially if it's a trusted position, an accountant, a lawyer, an architect, somebody who has to have some immediate answers and important ones. So if anyone listening out there is in any of those professions, even if you, I think, can increase your cleanliness and organization by 20 to 50%, I think that would be enormous because coming from a legal profession, I was telling you before the show, it seems a lot of lawyers are the sloppiest people in the world. I don't know why, but they are.
Well, I think they, have that reputation because there's so many piles of paper. But when you think about the legal profession, there is just a lot of paper in that particular profession. But in addition, a lot of lawyers, not all, nothing's ever 100%, tend to be the big picture thinkers and tend to pile more than other personality types. All personality types pile, but bigger picture ones, we call them organics and smarts, tend to pile even more than, say, classics or funds. There's 4 different organizing styles: classics, funds, organics, and smarts. And for some reason, lawyers tend to be smarts, some organics. And then because you're dealing with so much paper, even if you have a classic lawyer, you're going to be having more piles. So, we try to meet clients where they're at. So when we go into somebody's office, a law office, we see all the piles. A lot of times it's on the floor, it's on your surface, so you can't really work as well. And what we do is we say piles are going to happen. Obviously, I'm looking at them. Somebody's not going to overnight become a daily filer. And so what we try to do is create homes for these piles. So whether it's more bookshelves, whether it's a console nearby, creating space for the actual desk for you to get stuff done. We love, there's a desktop accordion files. Those are great ways to have piles that are organized, but still visual and out, because, a lot of times with visual memory folks, so organics and smarts, if they put a file away in a filing cabinet, it almost ceases to exist. And so filing cabinets are great when that case is just done. We often say for those types, organics and smarts, filing cabinets should be treated like mausoleums. It's like where you go to put something to rest, but not something that's, actively being worked on. And those piles should always be out. And what we try to do too is just put formal structure around it so other people can interact. And it really is a piling system. So labels, open bins, so that, if you have somebody else on the case, they know where to find things, and even if in your absence.
Are we different at work? Could the same person be, Clark Kent and Superman, 2 different backgrounds? Can we be neat at work and sloppy at home? I mean, I know we can, but do people tend to do that, or am I wrong?
Yes. And I think, in the age of COVID, you've seen that by the fact that how many people on Zoom calls have the fake background, because at home you maybe are not the same tidy person you are in the office. And, it's everybody can be on best behavior, and you often are at work because you're being compensated by somebody else. And so you have to live by their standards. But at home, you're most often your shoes off self. And so really our systems are built to work with who your shoes off self is, not who you wish you'd be, not who your mom wants you to be, your boss wants to be, but really who you are, the person who leaves their shoes, in the middle of the room, who leaves a pile of paper on the dining room table. And we try to work with that, and we try to help people just accept who they are, stop fighting it, and then find compromises that work around who they are, by nature. If you don't hang up your coat every day, it's going to be really hard to train yourself to hang up a coat in a coat closet. I mean, it's like a 5-6 step process to do that. And when you come home from work, there's a lot of personalities who are just never going to do that. And so what we try to do is things like, well, where can we put hooks on a wall? Because that's as close as you can get to draping it over, ease-wise, to draping it over a chair. And those are the kind of things, that's another principle, is try to like winnow things down to as close to one step as possible. It's not always possible. There are classics, and to a certain extent funds, who don't like to see coats out in their entryway. They really want them in the coat closet. And so with those folks, especially if they're married to an opposite type, what we try to do is say, okay, so let's have hooks inside the closet for the people who just aren't going to ever take the hanger out and put their coat on and put the hanger back and all those things. Hooks really are a nice compromise. They've prevented a lot of home wars. So
you make me very nervous. It's like sitting with a good detective, because every once in a while you say something and I think, did you have a granny cam? And when you talked about the piles on the dining room table, there's nothing wrong with piles on the dining room table. That's a perfectly good office for some people, like
Piles seek surfaces. So that's why we would tell you, if you're a piler, you just need more surfaces. Like, your dining room table is always going to have piles if you don't have enough surfaces where the pile, your office should be. And so we really are about creating them. We tell people all the time, like, you probably have a cabinet in your kitchen that is unused that has 5 shelves that you could have all your piles in. It wouldn't have to be on the countertop. And I really would tell you that although we have clients who are single, most of our clients, usually our single clients, are when we do their offices. But most home clients we have are married couples, because it's rare that you marry the same exact person in organizing style or otherwise. And we joke we're marriage counselors. We're always just trying to find compromises that can work for 2 different types. Like when you said about when I had said something about the dining room table pile, there was 2 divergent types that were married, a client. One was an organic structure and one was a classic structure. And before she married him, she would come on her way past the dining room table, she would drop her mail. And then as she kept walking by it throughout the week, she'd think, I got to do the bills. And it was on a to-do list, but it was another reminder, visually reminding her she had to do the bills. When he moved in, he couldn't stand that pile on the dining room table. So he just hid it away in a nearby cupboard. And 1 or 2 months, she forgot to do the bills. And he's like, how can you forget to do the bills? And she's like, well, you removed one of my main reminders. It was part of her system, so to speak. She had a 2-part system, and he removed one of the legs, and it kind of fell apart. What we came up with for them is, on her same route that she would drop the mail, we put like a clear acrylic, those like a folder holder. Usually you see them like magazines in doctor's office, and we had her put the mail there. So it was on her route. It was still visual. She still saw it, but it had a home, and it was tucked away a little bit as a compromise, as a nod to the classic needing to hide things away. Because there are types that just get stressed out by seeing too much clutter and piles. And so you have to find a way to balance between those two, whether it's you're in an office together or whether you're at home. And now, hopefully one day we'll be in a post-COVID world. We're all back in offices, but there'll always be some cohabitation between office and home, or more of it now. And I think it's important to realize those differences.
You make many good points in your book, and as you're talking, and you can see that if someone like yourself just tells us a little tip, like a place to put the mail, if that bothers one person putting it on the table, and if there's a door hook or one of those little mail things that you put the letters in, it can work for both sides. Mm-hmm. Are there some universal tips you could tell us that you say, if you do this, these are some things we found with most people, they work? You mentioned the key bowl. So when we come in the house, put the keys in there. Mm-hmm. That would have saved me a lot of hours if I talked to you a few weeks ago, but go ahead.
I would say something as basic as those boxes in your drawers to put socks so they don't get hidden under other things. So a little structure within drawers is always a good thing. Lazy Susans, I think I mentioned them earlier. They make every cabinet on the top where it's almost too high for you usable, because you can just spin it with one finger and you see what you have. And oftentimes Lazy Susans look like they're going to be a waste of space or not store enough stuff. But when you can't reach things, you can't see things, it doesn't even matter. I mean, what I always tell people, and this goes across all personality types, is that in the end of the day, organization, the whole reason for it is retrieval. It is to be able to find things when you need them. And if you think about it that way and you build all your systems with that in mind, then everything becomes easier. Like, what's the point of those high shelves with a million cans or whatever if you're never going to see what's there? You're never going to retrieve it. You're never going to use it. So it's kind of like, why do you even have those things? And so always think about it that way. And that is universal. Can I get this easily? And that's what I'm doing. If I'm in someone's kitchen, even as basic as I'm doing their mugs and their plates, I'm always, while I'm figuring out homes for things, seeing if I can easily move them. And I do it quickly, because that's what you do in life, right? You're not carefully putting your coffee mug and carefully taking it out. You're usually in a rush, you got stuff going on. So that's what I'm always trying to do, is think about, is it easy to get to?
It's very practical. I love your ideas. Kelly, before we go further, I want our audience to know if they're listening and they're saying, who is this wonderful person who's going to change my life? It's Kelly McMenamin. She's our guest today. You're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. And today we're talking to the author of the book, Organize Your Way. She's a pixie, and she'll tell you what that means in a minute. Kelly, give us more information. Where can we find the book and the website where we can find out more information?
You can find our book. It's called Organize Your Way. It's on Amazon. It's also on our website, which is pixiesdidit.com. We are magical pixies who help you learn how to organize. We always say that, life isn't always easy, but organizing it should be. And that's really what we're about, teaching our clients and helping our clients.
Now, one of the things you mentioned in your book, you said, get good hangers. And I thought about that, and I thought, you're right. When I put those little wire hangers, things get bent, they fall off. I get mad. I then start punching a hanger, and I look really stupid. So that's a great point, though. And like little containers just to put, I guess, socks or whatever it is we're piling in the bottom of the closet. Give us some tips about that.
Well, when I was talking about containers for drawers, you can fold things or not fold things. You can toss them in. So they kind of work universally across personality types. More detail-oriented people like classics and funds are going to spend time folding underwear and socks very neatly. But other types, that's not really their jam, but they can still benefit from tossing it in a container within a drawer. And that's true of junk drawers. Everybody can benefit from a junk drawer, because you don't always have a home for everything that comes into your life. I usually put junk drawers kind of in the front hallway, since that's where everything enters or exits your life, really. But often it's people's kitchens, etc. But it's a good kind of way station for those things of, what is this? And there's nobody around to answer that question for you. But yes,
you mentioned in your book, too, how important it is to get the right containers. And you mentioned in free commercial a place called The Container Store, which sells containers. But it did make so much sense to me as a sloppy person that if you're going to get containers, if you get the right size, rather than a shoe box and a hat box and a sneaker box, if you get 4 good containers, and whether you want to put gloves in one, hats in the other, shoe, whatever, that made a lot of sense, and to measure to make sure that 4 or 6 or 8 will fit. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, when we first started our business a little over 10 years ago in the city, we found that we were often looking in someone's closet and they had containers. It was just like they didn't measure ahead of time, they didn't work or fit. So we really kept seeing that and thought, oh my God, all people really need to know is it's really important to measure once, twice, 3 times, and then go to the store. And then in addition, sometimes, even with measuring, you're like, that doesn't work. I can't see what's in there, let's say. And the reason we often recommend the container store is it's easier to return things than it is for Amazon. Amazon has, as everyone knows, Amazon has everything, but sometimes it's just not as easy to return things. And also the container store continues to have the same containers over and over again. A lot of white, clear acrylics, shallow, small organizers for little mini things that happen in drawers. They happen. It's just, and they need homes, and it's easier to find things when they have a home that's clear. And that's really why we put structure around, is it helps you be able to find stuff amongst your stuff when you need it. The whole point of organization. And I think earlier we were talking about coat hangers. The reason you want to have matching hangers in your coat closet, as well as in sturdy ones, in your clothing closet, is it creates the same visual plane for all your clothes so you see them, because I bet, if you don't have matching hangers, you could open your closet right now and one coat would be hidden between 2 coats because the hanger's lower and you don't see it. And then if you put them all on the same plane, you'll be like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that windbreaker, or that I haven't worn that in 5 years because it's been hidden. So those things happen. And that's really why, we tell people to go out. It's worth the investment, and it's not that much of an investment. And you'll actually wear things, see things that maybe you want to get rid of. You forgot you even had, that you don't care about anymore because you forgot you had.
Now I know not only have you been looking at my dining room table, you have a granny cam in my closet too. Because a couple of weeks ago I was looking at that for some golf jacket, and that night I found it. It nestled nicely between two other friends where I could not find it. So where do you recommend people start? Now you know a little bit about me from talking. I'm a slob, but clutter, not dangerous slob, I hope.
Yeah.
Would you start with my garage? Would you take me to a closet, or would you go to the basement, or where?
I always, our book, Organize Your Way, starts with the entryway, and I always start with the entry with clients because that's where everything comes into and out of your house. And sometimes, too, in addition to the entryway, I'm finding, because oftentimes entryways are not that big, but I'm always trying to find a place to set up a mailroom almost. That's the best way to describe it, but it's inboxes, bins for everybody in the house. And, nobody thinks about they're not managing a household like Downton Abbey, but in essence you are. It's a mini one. And, it helps you at work. It helps you at home if you have a place for everything. And really that's what an inbox is like, Bill, if you were my roommate and I was like, oh, this is Bill's, but I don't know where it goes, I would just put it in your inbox, and then you could be like, hey, did you see, I thought I had like a mail pile on the dining room table. I'd say like, oh, it's in your inbox. And so there's always, and then every time with that system, you don't even need to ask me. You'll think maybe it's in my inbox, and there it is. And so that's really why I work on decluttering the entryway, because that's where everything comes in and comes out. Seeing what's there, because if you see what's there, you'll build systems to accommodate knowing it's always going to be there. Right? If it's there already, it's probably always going to be there. And I really fight trying to move whole categories into other rooms, because it's most likely going to end up there. So I'm always just trying to find homes for things that already exist there that are easy, make things easier to see and get to.
You probably saw me just write that down. I put a note to myself: mail room and depository place where when we come in, start with the hallway. So,
and my joke is, I started, when I, a few years into the business, I noticed nobody ever had inboxes for their kids or their pets. And so like the person who was managing most of the house ended up having this massive amount of stuff for themselves in their inbox. And I'm like, you know what? Kids are people too. Like, you basically come home as a newborn from a hospital with papers. And same with pets. You go to vets, you have all these things. So I would tell you, if it's like just you and a cat, there's 2 inboxes that need to be there. You are separate entities, and there needs to be separate cubbies. And everyone can get behind that because everybody had to go to kindergarten and everybody had a cubby. So it's basically the same principle you learned when you were 5 years old. You have your own cubby, and that's where your teacher puts things, etc.
Kelly, before we wrap up, once again, give us the website real quick.
It's pixiesdidit.com, and you can figure out your organizing style. You can buy our book, Organize Your Way. It's also available on Amazon, and this has been a delight, Bill.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Hopefully you've helped everybody. You've definitely helped me a great deal. I'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.